For nearly 2 seasons, we have followed Dolores and Maeve on their journey of awakening. But they aren't the only hosts who can see. And tonight, we spend time with Akecheta, the Ghost Nation warrior who woke himself up and spent years searching for love and truth. It's a story of remembrance. On this week's Westworld, Season 2, Episode 8, Kiksuya. Hey everyone, D here, and welcome to this week's review of Westworld. So yes, of course, spoilers, yada yada yada. Alright, so another introspective kind of background episode, but one Westworld does very well. And even in giving background, they really kind of expand the storyline. So I love all of the choices that this show makes. Even in doing something different, they're still doing something awesome. One thing we can trust in every week. And yes, we step away from our big Dolores move and even kind of Maeve to a certain extent, though not really, to take a look at Akecheta, our Ghost Nation warrior, who we've seen over the past 2 years, and is, of course, one of the oldest hosts. If we remember, he was the one that met up with Logan in the initial pitch for Delos Corporation to take over the park. So he's been around a long time, and in fact even a bit before then, which is what we get to sort of kind of catch up, is again his whole story, which I found really intriguing and very spiritual in many ways. I mean, it goes through with the stereotype of the Native American tribes and such, but I love kind of taking this secondary story of somebody that we haven't really seen too much of, and seen it at how much, well, this whole evolution of the hosts, who've really been focusing a lot on Dolores, has in fact been happening elsewhere in the park, specifically out in the far reaches where you don't get a lot of interactions with security, where hosts can live for a long time. And that seemed to play a lot into Akecheta's awakening, as it were. It starts out, of course, we get to see him in the days really before the park opened, which we would assume to be the sort of beta test as Arnold and Ford were working out all of the narratives and the placements and everything like that. So Akecheta in his initial part, basically living out on the fringes of the park with the Ghost Nation, living their lives peacefully, happy, just doing their thing, all the way until our massacre at Escalante, where Dolores is asked to kill Arnold. So again, flashback to the early days of the park, and it is stumbling over this where, of course, he sees Arnold, he sees Dolores, and walks into the park and finds Arnold's little toy maze that he had made for Dolores as kind of a test for her. But this sets up in his mind and becomes an obsession, something he draws everywhere, tattoos everywhere, as his tribe talks about. He becomes overly focused on this. Until they go in and change his narrative, which of course clues us again into time-wise that this was the opening of the park. Like they said, they wanted to change the narrative, they wanted something a little more dehumanizing on the part of the Native, the Ghost tribe, something that wouldn't allow the guests to feel so bad when they killed them. Oh, so nice of Delos, their programmers. And this changes him to more of the big battle warrior, which becomes his next life. He forgets his old life, forgets his wife, and moves on to the new life. And this is where it gets real interesting. They mention later on about him being in Build Alpha 2. And this seems to have been the last time, the only other time that his programming was changed, because as we discover, he's out there for 9 years in total before he ends up getting himself killed so he can go down into the underground to look for Kahana for his wife. But it was that whole bit. I love that whole initial setup, because, you know, we're following his life and we're seeing him. He's much more brutal, as you said. He was born with fire and all of that. But amidst these journeys, he runs into Logan. And at least I was wondering what had happened with Logan. We had saw him back in the days. William put him naked on top of the horse and sent him off. We're assumed in season 1 that he had died. Of course, we learn this season that he did in fact live, and this is how he does it. Akecheta finds him, recognizes, as he said, he's feeling for this time that there are those out there who he can't hurt. He's already starting to become aware of his programming. He's seeing noticing the repetitions in his life. So when he comes across Logan, that just sort of opens the doors to the statement in his mad sun bleached delusion there that this is not the real world. And that kind of propels his whole awakening. So and I thought it was also very cool in that sequence how he already knew not to kill Logan, and in fact that his own people would come to save him. Is that because he's aware of his own programming, that discussion is happening? I mean, again, there's a lot of stuff that sort of happens just within this small scene here, which is really intriguing. So, of course, this sort of begins the process, then running into his old wife, recognizing her, and it almost looked like she did almost recognize him for a moment, but again, he starts to see these differences. Love the whole sequence where he does kind of have that really big awakening moment where he's attacking those ranchers or miners or whichever group that he keeps sort of attacking and killing. But once again, and I love how they've done this, how he kind of keeps repeating his sort of days and sequences and journeys. And in the midst of this, he realizes he's done all of this before. And I loved how that was done, how they sort of slowed it down, and he just had that great look of pausing and remembrance and discovery. I mean, there was so much that was going on there. I thought it was beautifully done. And this begins his journey where he eventually finds the basic construction, the newer construction at the edge of Westworld. And I know when they went back, it was all covered up. But I was wondering, is that just an extension of the park? Is that just the edge? Because the first thing that I thought that he had run into William's project out there, and perhaps it still is. It would certainly, they weren't allowed out there. But that's sort of the first impression that I had got when he had come across this giant pit, his doorway, which inspires him to go back and get his wife and begin that journey. And such a great, sweet sequence where he gets her to sort of wake up. You know, she's scared and cuts the rope, but it's just all calm and sweet and saying the old words the way they used to exchange them, and that stimulates her wake up. So again, it's great because it's not just him. He's the first, it seems, in this group. But kind of as one awakes, it inspires and pushes the awakening of those around him, which I thought was really interesting. Of course, the downside of being out on the edge of the park is you're not supposed to be outside the edge of the park. You're way outside your narrative, which is how his wife ends up getting caught and taken away. And that becomes his whole long journey throughout the park and the different sections, the different places, and the different people, which I thought was all very nicely done. But it does start to ring up some questions, which they sort of implied, but didn't entirely straightforward answer with that scene later on with Ford, which I thought was, again, just awesomely, beautifully done. Very creepy in its own sense of just having the frozen bear and the warriors around, and Ford's just sitting there carving off heads. Look, there's another map picture. Is this you? Again, interesting. But therefore does imply that he's been watching Akecheta for a long time. And I have to think at this point, after Kohana, after his wife gets taken, that Ford had to have interceded in some manner. Because Akecheta wandered for basically 9 years. I mean, 9 years since the initial opening of the park and his first build, to when he ends up deciding that the only way to find his wife is to go down underneath and get himself killed, which was smart. But I have to think that Ford had to have interceded at some point, done something, because Akecheta was way off of his narrative for most of that time. But that didn't seem to arise anyone from the Mesa. That didn't seem to get any of the security, any of the programmers, and anybody raising any suspicion. There was never like, this one unit, this host is all over the place. So I'd have to think kind of at some point here is when 4 did something, either cutting off his tracker or just changing the programming, that this is a wandering host. In order to take away that attention, because again, it's a very cool journey. It was very sweet, it was very intriguing, very spiritual, but definitely not part of your regular narrative. Now, of course, remaining undead or not killed, can't really say the undead, that means something totally different, for 9 years has its own difficulties trying to stay alive, but there's a bit of a motivation there. And that's sort of what I loved. What is it that he had told Ford later on? Is that, you know, his primary drive was honor for his tribe. So he gave himself a new drive. Which, again, very cool, more of the awakening. But in order to do this, you've got to stay alive. And in some ways, it was really interesting, that sequence where he's talking about, you know, it's work to stay alive and it's struggle. I really thought a lot of Old William of Man in Black. In this sequence, who is also in some ways fighting to stay alive at this moment, but dealing with those same challenges. He can't die, he's got to keep himself going. So despite their kind of head-butting between the two characters, I found in that sequence at least a lot of similarities. And it's within that he does meet Maeve's daughter and sort of creates the whole she saves his life. And that creates that honor, that protective thing, which again is part of the reasons we're hearing this whole story, among other stuff. Because of course, if he dies, he's going to forget. Doesn't want to forget. Until he realizes, of course, that to find his love, to succeed in his journey, he is going to have to die. And again, very interesting, just small, subtle sequence there as he's talking about he's returning to his tribe and seeing that more of his brothers were gone, but that other people remembering. And you have the old woman who's like, this is not my son, something is weird, and we have stories of these people underneath. So I guess in order to go search for the one place that he hasn't searched yet, gotta die. Which does in fact lead to our Scene of the Week for this week, and that is of course his little bit of discovery. I mean, one, I love the surprise of all the technicians of how long he's been down there. They're not going to sit around because it's a 4-hour update because he's been out there for so damn long. I'm not sure if he ever actually got updated in that sequence. I mean, I guess there's no way he could have fought it, but anyway, the fact that he was faking his own unconsciousness at that time was perfect. Another wonderful sign of an awake host. But the whole journey through the Mesa as he's trying to find his wife, it was nice, it was quiet, it was touching. I mean, you had that sense of awe and discovery and searching, and then he goes further and further down into the bowels until he gets down into the cold storage where he opens up and he's, you know, again, having all of this narration, this remembrance of what he is finding and what he is seeing. And then when he finally finds her, you have that beautiful just opening of the heart, that joy, that moment of, yes, finally, quickly replaced with utter loss, realizing that his journey has been for naught, that she is already gone. But he gets so spiritual in that moment, which is to me why it hit it, because not only do we have this great shifting of emotions, and we've got these beautiful sights in this cold room where everything is dark, and what does it Ford say, a flower growing in the darkness? Kind of a similar type of imagery here. But he realizes what? That his pain has been selfish, that it is not his own, that for everybody here there is somebody up there that is mourning their loss, even if they haven't realized it yet. It is such a great character, spiritual evolution jump. Such a move right there, again, to have, in the midst of tragedy, be able to see the greater connection of the world around you. And from that point, resigning him to go out and to prepare, to watch and prepare and be ready for whatever is coming up, to protect those other peoples that haven't lost yet. I thought was just getting me a little teary thinking about it anyway, right now. But yeah, it was just a wonderful whole sequence there. Now, as I had mentioned, little similarities between him and Man in Black. Old William, who's very lucky to be alive. He's got shot a lot. Also kind of interesting that Akecheta found Logan and now also has found William, is keeping them both alive. There's a bit of irony right there. But the fact that he is not letting him die because life is hard, life is a struggle, and you don't deserve to exit. It's awesome. It's so mean. It's so cruel. And yet not as cruel as his own daughter, which I love Grace showing up. I love the fact that she of course can totally speak the language, which is something that William has never bothered to learn. So that she and Akecheta can have that little quiet back and forth, talking about the sickness, the darkness, cruelty, kind of darkness inside of him. I'm assuming that's what he was meaning by sickness, that he is spreading out to others, allowing all of these people to come in and create all this darkness inside of the park. I mean, William's kind of behind the whole thing. So, yeah, in a way, I guess he is spreading a darkness. But then her promise to him is that he's going to suffer more with her. I know you want him to suffer. Trust me. Let me take him. It's going to be so much more worse. Ketcher's like, oh, okay, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, fine. Anyway, it was kind of a perfect little wrap-up because, of course, we have the daughter there kind of freaking out, seeing Man in Black because she can remember, which starts the whole conversation, him attacking and killing her and Mom and everything like that, which I think sort of led to, one, that was when William realized the whole maze, saw the real emotion inside of Maeve. And I think it's at that point where she got moved over to being the mana. Did he purposely separate them because of that? That's kind of an interesting thought. And Lee, don't want to forget Lee and Maeve. And I have to say, I'm quite impressed with Lee. Because I think he does have an emotion. He doesn't want Maeve to die. I think that was very clear. He does have another motive. And I don't think that it's one or the other. I think he's actually, in this point, trying to juggle both of them. Is that he owes Maeve, and I don't think he does. I think he has sort of an emotional connection. I don't think that he sees her as more than just a host, that he doesn't want her to die. And yet, she can control hosts with her mind, as he tells the technician, which was awesome. But yeah, it was very sweet because, yeah, he understands he's got to get the programming, he's got to do this thing. There is coding, there is information that is useful for his job and his company and all of that. But he does have this connection with Maeve, and I loved. I think they had a really sweet moment there where Lee was being honest and kind of reaching out, and talking about how she deserves to be with her daughter, to live, to teach her to love. I mean, really embracing this whole move of Maeve's. And then it comes down to Charlotte Hale to determine whether or not Maeve lives or dies. Those aren't good odds, except for that wonderful reveal. Oh, so beautifully done. Yes, not only can she control hosts, do the hardware handshake and the mesh network and all of that, Wi-Fi powers, I'm going to keep calling it that, but that she's doing it right now. And we reveal that the whole conversation that Akecheta has had with Maeve's daughter has not only been with the daughter, but with Maeve herself. He was telling Maeve his whole story of awakening. And it's just, it was so strong, because you're seeing all that. Even the time where he's talking, where he was telling her about, sometimes intentions can be misunderstood, and that's when the Ghost Nation attacked the family, Maeve and the daughter, or seemed to be attacking Maeve and her daughter, and it was really his attempt to go and warn them, to watch out for them. So it was just, it shows so much of what Akecheta has achieved, how clear he is in the conversation, how honored and how dedicated he is in protecting Maeve's daughter, because he owes her but is also protecting her so that should Maeve live, come and find them. If not, die well. It was just, and that she leaves with the same line that he was trading with his wife, that showed of love and heart was just, again, really powerful. What a way to end the episode. All right, just a couple of small things. One, Kiksuya, the title of this week's episode, is a Lakota word. Lakota is the language that the Ghost Nation speaks. That means to remember, to recollect, to bring to mind. And also big thanks to Ion Trone, who dropped that little bit of info for us. So thanks, Ion. Oh, and Dolores is known, of course, to Akecheta, called the Deathbringer, which usually isn't a good sign there, as he tells Ford in recollecting his discovery of the maze in the town of Escalante, when the Deathbringer killed the creator. So yeah, interesting also that Ford then turns around and lets him know that when the Deathbringer comes for me, you know that it's your time to gather your people and bring them to the new land. But yeah, not a lot of positive feelings here for Dolores. I mean, first off, obviously, the name Deathbringer, usually not a positive sign. But what is it that he tells the daughter? We have to find the door before the Deathbringer ends us all. So he does not see her battle as something that is worthwhile, which might explain why Dolores was shooting some of the Ghost Nation in one of our earlier flashbacks. Maybe. So Maeve is the only one that has administrative access to the park, especially after Bernard did the whole big wipe that we saw at the end of last episode. So it does make her rather valuable and unique, but Maeve always was. And of course, our scene of the week had its little emotional kick given to it by a new rendition of Nirvana's Heart-Shaped Box. Which, again, seemed appropriate as he's searching for his love. Alright, well I think that pretty much covers everything, all the big parts at least. So, only 2 episodes left in this season, and next week we're going to be getting maybe a little more backstory on William, it looks like. A little bit of relationship between him and Grace. Kind of expand that out. Should be interesting. They certainly did a great job with Akecheta's story tonight, so I am looking forward to it. But we got a lot of places to go before the season ends. We still got to get to Valley Beyond, right? We got to see what the whole new structure is there and what the big project is, and a lot of stuff to cover. Only 2 episodes left. Cannot wait. So, I will see you then, but thank you so much for joining me tonight. And if you enjoyed this review, you know what you can do. Go ahead and hit that like button. Thoughts, ideas, and comments, throw those down in the section below. And you can always catch me on Twitter and Instagram. I am at Darren Jakes. Please subscribe if you're not. Quick and easy, catch right there. Still got 2 episodes left with this. Preacher starting up in 2 weeks over on AMC. So good. We'll throw up, in fact, a couple of our more recent reviews you can check out right there. So, that's going to be it for me. I'm D, and I'm out of here. Catch you guys next time. Bye-bye.